The Mandalorians, Season 3, Episode 7, The SPIES. Welcome to Voice of the Fat Mantis. I am, of course, he, and we are going to be breaking down the latest, I believe it's Chapter 23 of The Mandalorian, the penultimate episode to Season 3. The problem is, something continues to linger with me. Last episode is lingering with me. Last episode was a lot like an STD. It's like it infects you and it constantly bothers you, and as much as you want to ignore it, you can't. And you think back into the time that you got it, and you wish you didn't have that memory, but it will never leave you alone. But now that you're grossed out, I would love it if you like this video, subscribe to this channel, keep tuning in to Voice of the Fat Mantis, ring the bell, and leave a comment. So we're going to get into right now. It actually starts with, of course, Elia Kane. She seems to be the new superstar of The Mandalorian, and they will not leave her alone. She is in cyberpunk Coruscant, and I actually love it when they make Coruscant a cyberpunky thing. And in terms of like imagery, it was utterly beautiful. Through the mist comes the most imperial of all imperial bots, things that look like a floating octopus. She gives her code, and who does she end up speaking to? Moff Gideon. This season has a reoccurring problem of not knowing how to create suspense. And I wish this wasn't the first time we saw him this season. There should be a better intro to such a villain who's notorious and has escaped, and there's mystery behind him. He should have appeared in some sort of, I don't know, something, but he's just there in a hologram. She reports everything about the Mandalorians. He's pissed. We cut to him, and he's in his secret base, and it looks like he has a new range of stormtroopers that look like jet troopers, all new costumes, upgraded, and he goes what seems to be 10 force fields deep, a vault that has the shadow cancel holo projectors of all the Imperial warlords that are behind everything. Of course, just like the Soviet Union, they are still colluding to try to control the galaxy, and they're pretending to be rinky-dink warlords, but really, there's enough of them right now to pretty much take on the incompetent people of the New Republic. We saw Hux's, from the sequel trilogy's father there, and he's actually in charge of Project Necromancer. Now, interestingly enough, in this conversation, Moff Gideon denies being involved in genetic exploration and is not trying to clone somebody according to him. This could actually explain everything having to do with Snoke and everything to do with Palpatine. And so let me explain. Project Necromancer, according to the new EU, was the project to bring Palpatine back from the dead. Hux's father is in charge of that department. However, it has nothing to do with Snoke. Now, it is possible, if Snoke is the brainchild of Gideon, it kind of makes sense why there's two rival clone projects. At the end, Necromancer will be superior, the Emperor will be back, and he'll be like, you know what? I'm going to use this Snoke guy, this freak they created. It's fascinating. I think it's going to end up like that he's going to absorb his group, but I guess we'll see. At the end of it, Moff Gideon is seriously ready to destroy some Mandalorians, and he's asking for backup from some of the more richer Moff. He does something really weird. Walks into the center of the holograms, and he dances around in a circle. Like he's like, hello, hello, hello. Which you've never seen in Star Wars anyone ever do, ever. Because usually people play it cool when there's a hologram. Because like if you're talking to somebody who's like 3 apples tall, you don't go pat them on the head. That's bizarre. You pretend they're normal size. Because in their world, they are. So, what did they see on the hologram? Him like, I don't know. Then we cut back to the fleet that Bo-Katan has earned or gained or was handed to because of plot armor, and they meet up with the other Mandalorians. They end up having a feast in their honor, and the armorer has them cook up those baby birds that were won in episode 4, I think it was. It was horrible, man. I thought they were going to train them to be their mounts, but I guess you gotta do what you gotta do in this horrible galaxy. This episode then mutates into something I absolutely, utterly loved, and I hate that the bad taste of last episode is on there, because I loved seeing the two groups of Mandalorians join forces, go back to Mandalore, and to go conquer or control and create the safety perimeter around the Great Forge. Then they're gonna call for others. While they're there, encounter some sort of sail barge. It looks like an airship, but it's actually a glider that skis across the surface of the glass that the Mandalore had become. It looked like something out of a Final Fantasy. if you know what I mean. Like, you finally got the hovercraft, and it's made of wood. And there are some old school Mandalorians there, living like savages on board. So now we've got a third group of Mandalorians. And at that dinner, in this episode, for whatever reason, they're always eating. Bo-Katan gives me another reason not to like her, and another reason to look at her as a weak, pathetic person. Apparently, she cut a deal with Moff Gideon in the opening days of the Purge. They struck first, and then she decided to cut peace with them and handed over the Darksaber. Yeah, I just said that. She handed over the Darksaber to him. And then he nuked her planet anyway. You know, Favreau and Filoni, you're giving me nothing here, bro. You're giving me nothing. So they decide to head out, and later on, they are attacked by a giant, massive beast. And so here's my issue. People don't believe in mythosaurs. They're like, mythosaurs, that's ridiculous. Giant dinosaur with horns, not even possible. But this giant creature is possible. Did those things used to roam Mandalore before? How is it not a mythosaur? What's the difference? If one is possible, shouldn't the other be? Doesn't make any sense. Also, maybe the reason why I can't go back to Mandalore is the surface is covered in monsters. Now, I kind of wish that had been known. That would have been a great explanation. They're like, since they nuked the place, giant monsters have come out of the center of the earth, and Mandalore is not safe. Then I would understand why they can't go back. But just a random giant monster comes out. And although I love seeing these things, it didn't go anywhere. They just kind of get to their cavern and they get out of there. Now, as they're headed down the cavern, the armorer says, I'm going to take our wounded back to our ship. She gets into Bo-Katan's ship and she goes into orbit, which is very un-armorer-like, if you know what I mean. If I'm making any sense here. And as they go deeper, they get to the forge, and when they get to the forge, they start getting attacked by what seem to be Imperial Super Commandos. A giant firefight ensues, and I'm having the time of my life. I absolutely love it. There's chaos going on, murder, death, and mayhem, Mandalorian style, trooper versus Mandos. I am absolutely loving it. And during the firefight, they're running through various areas, and they find some actually well-constructed hallways. They run through it, and they realize they're in some sort of compound. The deeper they go, it's clear to be some sort of Imperial compound, and it's clear that the Imperials, particularly Moff Gideon, has built a base in the heart of Mandalore, and that is why he doesn't want anyone coming back. It's fascinating that we didn't think that this was possible. That makes sense. The plundering of Beskar, that absolutely makes sense. Another thing, is it possible that his genetic experiments are making those monsters? If that's the case, I would love that to just be stated. But he flies down in new Mandalorian black armor. Now, I gotta say, I don't like that he's kind of like a wannabe Darth Vader. Why do so many villains in Star Wars have to be wannabe Darth Vaders? Moff Gideon was already doing a good job of being his own dastardly figure. Now that he's clad in a dark armor, I don't know. It's looking like Vader light to me. The next firefight, they're able to cut the Mandos off from Din Djarin, and they're able to take him prisoner. A Paz Vizsla runs out there, gets caught between his party trying to get the hell out of there, and a firefight with literally every jet trooper this side of the galaxy, which, by the way, Paz Vizsla wins, which I love. He has his Gatling gun overheat to the point where the thing is melting in his hands, and I'm like, triple OG status, this guy's a hero. And of course, as soon as he's done with all the scrubs, 3 Praetorian guards with electro weapons come out. And I'm like, oh, and he turns on his little buckler, and he takes out his little vibro knife, and I'm like, this is the way. So he goes out like a hero, and that's where our episode ends. I gotta say, I really enjoy this episode, but there are some takeaways we've got to talk about. First thing is my man Grogu. I gotta actually say, I find it adorable that he has this suit. Now, this suit was spoiled for us on the internet already. I didn't know what it would look like, but somebody said Krang from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And sure enough, it's adorable, Krang. And the fact that he has a yes and no button and he can snatch things, it's adding a new level of adorability. And in the infinite possibilities of the world of Star Wars, I am pro the shenanigans of his little exoskeleton. So I'm kind of into it. Next, The idea that Mando not only is leaving the show at the end, but he's actually going to die next episode. It's the reason why I think this is very possible. He literally foreshadowed it. He actually, in a one-to-one with Bo-Katan, said, I don't follow the Darksaber. I don't follow any of the bloodline either. I only follow honor, and I'm honor-bound to you, and I will be with you until the end. And I'm like, oh boy, what a maroon. Maybe they'll switch it and they'll kill Bo-Katan. One can hope. I'm not saying that I hate her. I'm just saying if someone has to go, I'd rather it be her. Then I gotta say, the episode is called The Spies. Elia Kane was our first spy. Who else do we have as a spy? Well, I'll tell you. I think our second spy actually is none other than the Armorer. It was so out of character and so bizarre that she decided to take the wounded and get in a shuttlecraft and suddenly leave her position when she's usually such a proactive warrior. What was she doing down there? She volunteered in the first place when usually she stays behind. Now she has a chance to fight. She chooses not to. Something is weird is going on. Now, a lot of people say, well, she must be working for Moff Gideon. I don't actually believe that, and here's why. Moff Gideon learned everything about the Mandalorians this time around from Elia Kane. If he was in constant cahoots with the Armorer, he would have already known what they were doing, and he could have spoiled their attempt to stop the pirates in the first place. So she's working with somebody else. Who is she a spy for? I don't know, but I really don't trust her. Now, a lot of internet speculation is that she's Rook. Who is Rook? Rook was the third in command of Darth Maul's Mandalorian rule. For a short time in the Clone Wars, he took over Mandalore. And people who followed him had red and black armor. They had his tattoos on their mask, and they had spikes coming out of it. Now, her helmet, the Armorer's, has spikes as well. It is possible that she is Rook. Now, I assume that if she is actually this woman Rook, she's looking for a way to redeem herself. Because everybody who knows who worked for Darth Maul were considered traitors who dishonored themselves. And that might be she has such strong guilt that she would do something like wear her mask for all of eternity. I don't know who she is, but I don't think it ends up being Moff Gideon. There's something far deeper and more twisted to her tale. I don't know where this is going, but a few predictions that I might have. I think they're going to use the Mythosaur to destroy that monster topside, and that's something they're going to have to do. I bet you Bo-Katan will ride it because, well, she's a Filoni character, and, well, we gotta love Filoni characters, right? It's possible Mando will be leaving us, and I actually do think we're going to get an Armorer reveal. I think it's time. I think they foreshadowed it, and it's going to happen. And quite frankly, I can't wait. But the real question is, what did you think of this episode? Who do you think is the true spy? Let me know. What do you think about the Armorer? And what do you think of the idea that she is Rook? Is the Mandalorian really leaving us? Please let me know down in the comments. Remember to like this video, subscribe to this channel, ring the notification bell, and keep tuning in to Voice the Fat Mantis. Until next time, may the Force be with you.